Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Your appearance isn't quite up to our establishment standards. You're making the other patrons uncomfortable, the bar manager said, his voice a low, condescending drawl. He gestured towards the door with a flick of his wrist. Sergeant Thomas Tom Riley, 71, looked down at his clean but admittedly well-worn denim jacket and faded jeans, then back at the manager's smug face. Scruffy? Son, this scruffy jacket has seen more of the world than you've seen years. The manager just smirked. Policy is policy. Out. 5 minutes later. As Tom stood on the sidewalk, the bar door opened again. This time, a man in the crisp, unmistakable uniform of a Marine Corps colonel strode in, his eyes already scanning the room with quiet authority. If you believe respect is earned, not bought, type respect below. Thomas Tom Riley was a man etched by time and trial. His face, weathered like old leather, bore the road map of a life lived hard. From the humid jungles of Vietnam, where he'd served 2 harrowing tours as a Marine infantryman, to the subsequent decades navigating the often unfriendly terrain of civilian life. He wasn't homeless, but he lived frugally on his modest service pension in a small, slightly run-down apartment on the edge of town. He kept to himself mostly, his gruff exterior hiding a deep well of loyalty and a quiet, unshakable integrity. His attire reflected his circumstances and his practicality. Clean but faded jeans, sturdy work boots, a chambray shirt, and his favorite old denim jacket. Its collar frayed, its elbows patched, but comfortable and familiar like an old friend. It bore no insignia, no outward sign of his past, just the silent stories embedded in its fabric. He'd come to the Gilded Mug, an upscale bar and grill that had recently opened in a gentrified part of downtown. Not for the trendy cocktails or artisanal appetizers, but because he'd heard they had a quiet corner where he could nurse a single beer and read his newspaper in peace. A small weekly ritual he allowed himself. He wasn't looking for trouble, just a brief respite. He'd chosen a small out-of-the-way table near the back, ordered a domestic draft, and settled in with his paper, bothering no one. The Gilded Mug prided itself on its exclusive atmosphere, its carefully curated clientele, and its even more carefully curated image. The manager, a man in his late 30s named Julian Vance. No relation to other Vances, a name that seems to attract managerial roles with a side of arrogance, saw himself as the arbiter of this image. Julian had a keen eye for what he considered undesirables. Anyone whose appearance didn't align with the affluent, trendy vibe he was trying to cultivate. He scanned his domain from his usual perch near the hostess stand, his gaze critical. His eyes landed on Tom Riley, tucked away in the corner. The faded denim jacket, the worn jeans, the general air of someone who didn't belong among the tailored suits and designer dresses. It grated on Julian's sensibilities. He decided Tom was bad for business, a visual blight on his carefully constructed tableau of upscale leisure. He signaled a young busboy. Keep an eye on the old guy in the corner. Make sure he doesn't overstay his welcome on 1 beer. Then, after a few more minutes of observing Tom quietly reading, Julian decided direct action was needed. He smoothed his silk tie, put on his most patronizing smile, and sauntered over to Tom's table. "Excuse me, sir," Julian began, his voice using false politeness that didn't quite mask the condescension. "Enjoying your evening?" Tom looked up from his paper, surprised. "Yes, thank you. Just having a quiet beer." "Excellent, excellent," Julian purred. "The thing is, sir, the Gilded Mug strives to maintain a certain ambience, a particular standard of dress and decorum for the comfort of all our valued patrons." He let his gaze drift pointedly over Tom's denim jacket. "And while we appreciate your business, your current attire is perhaps a little too casual for our preferred evening environment." Tom frowned, not understanding. "Casual? Son, I'm wearing clean clothes. I'm not bothering anyone. I'm just reading my paper." Julian's smile tightened. "Perhaps scruffy would be a more apt description, sir. No offense intended, of course. But we do have an image to uphold. Other guests have noticed." This was a lie. No other guest had complained, or likely even registered Tom's quiet presence. "Frankly," Julian continued, dropping the pretense of politeness, "you don't quite fit the profile of our typical clientele. It's making some of our regulars uncomfortable." Tom felt a slow burn of anger start deep in his chest. Scruffy. Uncomfortable. He'd worn this very jacket to lay wreaths at war memorials, to comfort grieving Gold Star mothers. It was clean. It was functional. It was his. And what profile is that exactly? Tom asked, his voice dangerously quiet. The The kind that judges a man by the cut of his cloth instead of the content of his character? Julian bristled at the implied criticism. Sir, I'm not going to debate semantics with you. This is a private establishment with the right to refuse service. Your appearance is disruptive to the atmosphere we cultivate. I'm going to have to ask you to finish your beer and leave. Tom stared at him, the insult settling heavily. To be thrown out of a public place, not for any disruptive behavior, but simply for not looking wealthy enough. For looking scruffy. It was a humiliation he hadn't felt so acutely in years. So, a man who served his country, who fought for the freedoms you're enjoying in this fancy bar, gets thrown out because his jacket isn't new enough for you? Julian scoffed. Oh, here we go. The veteran card. Look, sir, I appreciate your service. Really, I do. His tone made it clear he didn't. But that doesn't give you a free pass to ignore our establishment standards. Now, are you going to leave quietly, or do I need to have my security escort you out? He gestured subtly towards two large, bored-looking bouncers near the door. Tom knew a losing battle when he saw one. He wasn't about to get into a physical altercation. He slowly drained the last of his beer, placed a $5 bill on the table, more than enough, and stood up, his old joints protesting. You'll get your wish, son, he said, his voice tight with contempt. I wouldn't want my scruffiness to tarnish your gilded cage. He picked up his newspaper and walked with as much dignity as he could muster towards the exit, Julian watching him with a smug, satisfied smirk. As Tom stepped out onto the cool evening sidewalk, the sting of the manager's words, the casual cruelty, lingered. He wasn't used to being treated like refuse. He found a nearby bus stop bench and sat down heavily, needing a moment to collect himself. He thought about just going home, forgetting the whole incident. But something about Julian's smug, dismissive face, the utter lack of respect, gnawed at him. This wasn't just about a beer or a dress code. It was about a fundamental lack of decency. He pulled out his old, reliable cell phone. There weren't many numbers in it he called regularly, but there was one saved under Gunny Emerge. Gunnery Sergeant Frank Gunny Miller, ready, his old platoon sergeant. A man who had connections everywhere, especially within the Marine Corps community. Active and retired, Gunny Miller now ran a very successful private security firm that often liaised with high-level military and corporate entities. Tom dialed. Yeah, Miller. The familiar gruff voice answered. Gunny, it's Tom Riley. Got a minute? Skipper, you bet. What's up? You sound riled. Tom quickly explained what had just happened at the Gilded Mug. The manager, the scruffy comment, being told to leave. He wasn't asking for anything specific, just venting to an old friend who would understand the insult. Gunny Miller listened. His only interjections, a series of increasingly angry grunts. The Gilded Mug, you said? Downtown near the financial district? Manager named Julian Vance? That's the one, Tom confirmed. All right, Skipper, Gunny Miller said, his voice now dangerously calm. You just sit tight for a few minutes. Let me make a quick call. Seems like some folks need a little refresher course in common courtesy and respect for their elders. Especially those who wore the eagle, globe, and anchor. Don't go anywhere. I'll call you back, or you'll know. The line clicked. Tom wasn't sure what Gunny meant by you'll know, but he trusted him implicitly. He waited. Less than 5 minutes passed. The door of the Gilded Mug, which Tom could still see from his bench, opened. It wasn't Gunny Miller. A man strode into the Gilded Mug with an air of quiet, indisputable authority. He was in his late 50s, impeccably dressed in the Marine Corps Service Alpha uniform. Green coat, khaki shirt and tie, rows of ribbons gleaming on his chest, the unmistakable rank insignia of a full colonel on his shoulders. His posture was ramrod straight, his gaze sharp and assessing as he surveyed the bar. Patrons paused their conversations, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Julian Vance, the manager, who had been pining near the bar, congratulating himself on maintaining standards, saw the colonel enter. He initially brightened, assuming a high-value customer had arrived. He moved forward, his professional smile pasted on. Good evening, Colonel. Welcome to the Gilded Mug. Table for one. Colonel Marcus M. McKinley, a highly respected officer currently stationed at a nearby regional Marine Corps command and an old friend and golfing buddy of Gunny Miller, who had indeed made a very swift and very pointed call, did not return the smile. His eyes were like chips of ice. Are you the manager of this establishment? Colonel McKinley asked, his voice calm but carrying the clear weight of command. Yes, indeed, Julian Vance, at your service, Julian replied, still oblivious. How can I assist you, Colonel? You can start, Colonel McKinley said, his voice dropping slightly but gaining intensity, by explaining to me why, approximately 5 minutes ago, one of your staff, presumably yourself, saw fit to eject a decorated combat veteran, a United States Marine, from this bar for the egregious offense of looking scruffy while wearing a denim jacket. Julian's smile vanished. His face went pale. He suddenly remembered the old man he'd just thrown out, the man's quiet anger. Colonel, there must be some misunderstanding. We have a dress code. A dress code? Colonel McKinley interrupted, taking a step closer. Let me tell you about dress codes, Mr. Vance. That scruffy Marine you ejected, his name is Sergeant Thomas Riley. He served 2 tours in Vietnam. The jacket he was wearing has likely seen more action, protected him from more shrapnel, and absorbed more sweat earned in the service of this country than your entire inventory of silk ties. He has earned the right to wear whatever damn jacket he pleases, wherever he pleases, especially in a public establishment that benefits from the freedoms he fought to protect. The bar had gone utterly silent. Everyone was watching, listening. Julian looked like he was about to be sick. Furthermore, Mr. Vance, Colonel McKinley continued, his voice a low, controlled growl that was more intimidating than any shout. Sergeant Riley is not just some veteran. He is a man of immense honor and integrity, a man to whom I and many others who wear this uniform owe a debt of respect. Your decision to eject him based on such superficial and insulting grounds is not just poor customer service. It is a profound display of ignorance and disrespect that reflects shamefully upon this establishment. He paused, letting his words sink in. I just spoke with Gunnery Sergeant Miller, who, as you may or may not know, runs one of the largest corporate security consulting firms in this city. He is displeased. He has many clients, many influential friends who frequent establishments like yours. He also has a very long memory for insults directed at his Marines. Julian's eyes widened in dawning horror. The name Gunny Miller and his firm were well known in business circles. This was escalating far beyond a disgruntled customer. Now, Colonel McKinley said, his tone final, you have 2 options. Option 1, you will immediately locate Sergeant Riley, who I believe is currently sitting on a bus bench outside your door. You will bring him back in here. You will offer him your most sincere, groveling apology. You will personally serve him whatever he desires from your menu, on the house, for the rest of the evening, and you will ensure he is treated with the utmost respect by every single member of your staff. Option 2, the Colonel's smile was thin and humorless, is that I make one more phone call. This one will be to the local licensing board, the health department, the fire marshal, and perhaps a few friendly journalists who cover city affairs and enjoy stories about businesses that mistreat veterans. I assure you, by the time they are done, your gilded image will be permanently tarnished. Your choice, Mr. Vance. You have 60 seconds. Julian Vance didn't need 60 seconds. He was already scrambling towards the door, his face a mask of sheer panic, almost tripping over a bar stool in his haste to find Tom Riley and beg his forgiveness. Colonel McKinley watched him go, then calmly ordered a club soda from the stunned bartender. His presence alone ensuring the entire bar remained on its best behavior. Tom Riley, surprised by Julian Vance's sudden frantic appearance at the bus stop, his abject apologies, and his desperate pleas to return to the bar, found himself escorted back into the gilded mug like a returning hero. He was seated at the best table, Julian hovering obsequiously, the terrified staff tripping over themselves to offer him drinks and appetizers. Colonel McKinley joined him, and the 2 old Marines shared a quiet beer, talking about old times while the rest of the gilded mug operated in an atmosphere of hushed respectful awe. Julian Vance learned a valuable and expensive lesson that night about judging books by their covers and about the long reach and unwavering loyalty of the Marine Corps Brotherhood. The gilded mug's dress code became significantly more flexible thereafter, especially for anyone who looked even remotely scruffy, but carried themselves with quiet dignity. Because some men earn their place at any table, not by the cost of their clothes, but by the caliber of their character and the depth of their service. And sometimes it only takes one well-placed colonel to remind the world of that. Subscribe to this channel if you believe true class isn't about attire. It's about respect.